Okay. Am I in a good place? I need a different chair.
Slide over a little bit.
Hold on, let me have that chair right there, please. Yeah, this one. Drop down. Thank you, chair. There.
More.
More?
Right there.
That's it. You ready? All right. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة والتسليم على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم المصطفى الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما والحمد لله على كل حال. إنك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم إني أعوذ بك أن أدل أو دل أو زل أو زل أعدل ما أظلم وأجهل يجهل علي. All right, Bismillah. So we've been off for a while, huh? Alhamdulillah. Welcome back, everyone. Alhamdulillah. So, all right, we'll just do like a real quick recap. Let's try not to forget that all of this stuff is actually connected. And, you know, eventually we circle back around, you know, like we go up the mountain, we go over the ridge, we come back down around, but we're on a trajectory. We're trying to get somewhere, all right, inshallah. This class is about the science of ihsan, which means spiritual excellence. And if you want spiritual excellence, there's a lot of work that you have to do on yourself. There's a lot of work that you have to do on yourself. And this is what, you know, the ulama have explained. The scholars of Islam, they have explained that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها, that he is successful, he is most successful, the one who purifies it, meaning purifies the soul. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا, and the one who leaves it like it is, he's ruined. Okay? And I've explained in these classes that we all receive our soul on default. All right? On default. So, you know, you're born, and that was the reason why I went over all of the quwwah, right? All of the quwwah, all of these powers that come when you're born. You're born with certain powers. What were they? The power of? Passion. Quwwat al-shahwa. Quwwat al-shahwa. You're born with that. All right? Your nafs, your soul has a demander. Your soul has a demander, and it wants food, it wants drink, it wants sleep, it wants all of the bodily appetites. All right? That's quwwat al-shahwa. What's the other one? Intelligence. Yes. Quwwat al-aql. All right? This is your ability to discriminate, your ability to learn, your ability to hear, see, and recognize the truth. Okay? And if you get in the habit of denying that truth, of pretending that you don't understand, then eventually you'll become a liar. Right? And then the last one? No? Anger. Quwwat al-ghadab. Quwwat al-ghadab. The power of anger. We're all born, we have this. If you didn't have that, if you didn't have an ability to get angry, then you would just be a coward. You would never demand justice for yourself. You would never demand justice for your family. You know, you would never stand up for yourself and say, no, that's wrong. All right, let's rectify this. If you didn't have that power, then, like I said, you would be a coward. But too much of it, if it's unregulated, then you just become reckless. You become reckless. All right? So all of these powers is what leads to all of our virtues or all of our vices. Okay? That's what we're talking about. So, do we have any farmers in here in this room? Anybody has any experience with agriculture? No? Wow. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to use the analogy of a tree. All right? If you want an orange tree, we live in California, there's a lot of orange trees, a lot of lemon trees, grapefruit trees, right? If you want an orange tree, the first thing you do is you buy the seeds. So you have to know something about those seeds. You have to know where you get them from, eventually what that seed is going to produce. All right? So everything starts with the seed. The human being is no different. And that's the reason why I started with these 3 seeds. These 3 seeds, the power of anger, the power of passion, all right, the power of intellection, the ability to discriminate. Those 3 powers, I started with those 3 powers because these are like your seeds. This is what the human being is born with. All right, the human being is born, these seeds are there. How you cultivate them is going to determine the fruit at the end. Okay? How you cultivate them. Because these 3 powers is where all of your character and your spiritual virtues are going to emanate from. So however you cultivate them, however you grow them, however you deal with them, that's the fruit in the end that's going to be produced. Okay? So today, I want to talk a little bit more about the foundation. I want to talk about the trunk. All right, we talked about the seeds. All right, we have some information about the seeds. You said today was the 14th class? So today is the 14th class. We've been at this 14 sessions. And believe it or not, we're just getting started. Really, I'm telling you the truth. I was looking at all of the stuff that we have to go over. We got a lot more stuff to go over. Okay? We've got a lot more stuff to go over. The foundation, right? With the strength of the tree, okay? It begins with the roots, right? And then the roots support the trunk. You've got to have that foundation. All right? So, if the foundation, what we're going to talk about today, is going to be about taqwa and istiqama. Okay? Taqwa is having like this awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's translated a lot of different ways. It's translated like God consciousness, fear of God. I prefer awe, right? You stand in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it makes you afraid to offend Allah. All right? That's taqwa. You don't want to offend God. Okay? That's taqwa. Now, what is istiqama? Istiqama is to be upright, to stand firm with taqwa. Okay? So inshallah, that's what we're going to talk about. And then there's branches. Okay? The branches. On a real tree, what do the branches and the leaves do? What do they do? What's that?
They make the food and distribute.
Right. Right? The tree stands in one place, but the branches go out and bring back to the person or to the tree food through photosynthesis. Right? It turns sunlight into nutrients, and it gets its nourishment that way. So we also have branches. Right? We also, with this science I'm talking about, we have branches. So taqwa and istiqama is the trunk. And it has to be upright, has to be established, and it has to be upright. But then there's branches that brings that feeds that taqwa and istiqama. And I like to call them salat, salawat, da'wat, and kirat. Okay? So salat, clear. Salawat ala nabi. Singing prayers upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? Very, very important. Da'wat, Rabbi ya Rabbi. Turning to Allah. Turning to Allah, begging Allah, asking from Allah. Okay? And don't make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like a human being. Don't think because people let you down that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to let you down. Don't think that. All right? Ask big things from Allah. Ask things from Allah like you just like, I don't know how this is going to happen, ya Allah, but this is my request. Okay? And kirat, just reciting the Quran. This is nutrients. This is going to feed your taqwa and your istiqama. It's going to feed it. All right? And then there's other things, like how you discipline yourself. Eat less, sleep less, talk less, and useless association with people. Do that less. Okay? All right? That's the scholars say. قلة الطعام قلة منام قلة كلام وخلوة أن أنام. Right? Like just eat less, sleep less, talk less, stay away from the people. All right? Useless, in useless activities. But if you're teaching and learning, always associate with that. Okay? So those are the branches. We're you know what I mean? We'll probably get there by the summertime. And there's other things that we have to talk about, like the community, how the community is supposed to support this. Right? Where do you take your knowledge from? Who's the sheikh? Right? You have to have someone who has walked this path. He has benefited from this path. Right? And he can take you along that path. Okay? There's the dangers. Somebody sent me an email the other day and was asking me about spiritual experiences. Like what, that's something that the sheikhs have talked about. Where people, they go through these spiritual experiences and then they get ripped off. Shaitan might come to you start making progress, start cleaning yourself up a little bit, you start having, these true spiritual experiences, and then you get a nafsani or a shaitani experience. Shaitan is trying to influence you, right? Or the nafs is really driving you to do something you ain't got no business doing, to say something you had no business saying, and you have to know how to discriminate, right? These are all things that eventually we have to talk about, all right? Then that's what I just want to let you know, like we're just really getting started. All right, there's a lot to talk about. Okay. At the end, what are we after? What are we after at the end? What are we after? All right, with this science, right? Every science wants to produce fruit. Okay? If you study for fiqh, right, which is Sharia, you study Sharia, right? And Sharia is how do you make wudu correctly? What are the conditions of wudu? What breaks your wudu? What is the wudu according to the sunnah? What is a wudu that's fard? Right? Like you can study all of that. Say you could do the same thing with salat, same thing with zakat, same thing with Ramadan, marriage and divorce, buying and selling, right? That's all Sharia. What's the point of that? What is the fruit what are we trying to get at when we study that? The fruit is that your actions are acceptable to Allah. Right? Your actions are valid. Okay? Because if you're making salat, but you don't have wudu, because you never learned how to make wudu correctly, you don't know the conditions of wudu, right? Yeah, it's invalid. It's invalid, right? Completely invalid. And so you'll come before Allah on the Day of Judgment. Inshallah, Allah will forgive, especially if you didn't do it knowingly. Allah will forgive. But you don't get credit. It doesn't go to your credit. It's just, oh no, oh, you're forgiven. Okay, you're forgiven. But what if it benefited you, illuminated you, drew you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Okay? So then, but with this science, we're after something specific. We want nearness to Allah. That's what we want. With this science, we want nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? We want what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, qalb salim. The sound heart. The heart with no defects. That's what we're after. Okay? And when you have a heart, that's the illnesses, the spiritual illnesses are removed, Allah gives you spiritual gifts. Allah gives you spiritual gifts. Okay? You will have firasa, right? Like this spiritual insight. You will have ilham. Ilham is when the angels inspire you. You have angelic inspiration. It will happen when you're asleep, and it will happen when you're awake. That's ilham. Okay? You will have kashaf. Kashaf is when the veils are removed. The Sahaba had this. The Sahaba, they had this. And the generation after them had it. And the generation after them had it. Right? And that's what made them compile this and make this a science. They had this. Don't be in doubt about this. Don't be in doubt about this. Right? Without going into a lot of details. Right? They had all kinds of spiritual experiences. We know that there's different levels of existence. There's jinns, there's angels, right? There's creation that we don't know anything about. There's all type. Allah is Rabbil Alameen. Okay? And if you could witness those things, it would increase you in certainty. It would increase you. You would have no doubt. Right? And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did with Nabi Ibrahim. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that وَنَرَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ مَلَكُوتُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. We showed him the malakut, the spiritual realm of the heavens and the earth. Right? Why? لِيَكُونُ مِنَ الْمُوقِنِينَ. So that he could be of those that had yaqeen. And if you read the tafsir, they tell you, Allah removed his veils so that he could see the different levels of existence all the way up to the divine throne. That's what Allah did for Nabi Ibrahim, Prophet Abraham. Right? We are his ummah. We are the people that say, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad. Kama sallayta ala Sayyidina Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim. Innaka hamidun majid. We are the ones that say, oh Allah, send prayers and blessings upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the family of Muhammad. The same way that you blessed Abraham and the family of Abraham. That's what we say 5 times a day in the prayer. That's what we say. You have a connection, a direct connection to Abraham and to his descendant, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Nabiullah, Rasulullah, and Mustafa. Direct connection. All right? Which means also, you get the spiritual gifts. You have access to the spiritual gifts. Okay? Have no doubt about that. Have no doubt about that. We have many, many spiritual masters over and over and over again who have put in their books, you do this, this will happen. And I am your witness. You have thousands and thousands of scholars saying the same thing over and over and over again. It's true. It's not a lie. But you have to be brave enough. You have to be brave enough to take it on for yourself. Don't be content with doing the minimum. But get your courage up and take upon yourself to do more. Your capacity, you have a huge spiritual capacity. But you have to take it on. أَلَيْسَ الْإِنسَانُ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. Mankind only gets what he strives for. That's it. You strive for it, Allah will help you. If your intention is pure, Allah will help you. You'll get there. And there's too many hadith that promise that. Too many. Where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the hadith Qudsi, right? Like if you come to Allah one hand span, the span of your hand, He will come more. If you come to Allah walking, He'll come to you running. Allah will help you, Allah will support you, but you have to be brave enough to at least get on the path. And the last talk that I did here, the dua, beg Allah. أعني ولا تعن علي وانصرني ولا تنصر علي وانصرني ولا تنصر علي. Beg Allah, help me, don't help against me. Plan for me, don't plan against me. Give me victory, don't give victory against me. Beg Allah. And you'll see. Okay. Now, what are we talking about today? Taqwa and Istiqama. If you put these two together, then you should understand that this is about the pursuit of piety. The pursuit of piety. You have to pursue it. Okay? A man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was a very simple man. The hadith says that he was a simple man, meaning Bedu. I mean, he was Bedouin. And sometimes they would come from the deserts, they would become Muslim, and they would ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam a question. Very simple questions. Like, give me advice. Just tell me one thing that I can do. Don't make it complicated. You know? And then he would give them succinctly what they needed to do to get right and to stay right with Allah. He said to the man two things. قُلْ آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Say, I believe in Allah, and then just be upright after that. Okay? So this is a very simple statement. But when you begin to break it down, you realize it's packed with meaning. And we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had what was known as Jawami al-Kalam. He had, and this is a divine gift, where you take a very complex idea and you say it to the person, and at their level it means one thing. But to someone who has more capability, more intellect, more insight, it's way more. And to someone that has a deeper understanding, they can break it down even more from those two meanings. Okay? So he told the man, say, I believe in Allah. In other words, have this conviction. Say, no. In my heart has accepted that there's only one God. Right? And then with that, there's conditions. If you say that you believe in Allah, right, there's things that you have to do. There's things that you cannot do. Right? And then be upright. To be upright, it means istiqama. Let's talk about istiqama for a second. Istiqama, Abu Ali al-Daqqaq, who was the father-in-law of Abu Qasim al-Qushayri. If you know these names are heavy hitters. When you read the Islamic literature, on spirituality. Right? Abu Ali al-Daqaq, he was explaining that statement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said that istiqama, there's 3 levels to istiqama. He said, the lowest level is, I'm trying to remember exactly how he said it. But he said that the lowest level was I believe that he said that the lowest level is taqsim. And the way that he explained it was like, this is just the outward, right? This is the outward. Doing, you have to rectify. You have to rectify yourself. You have to rectify your outward states. In other words, you got to learn a little bit of fiqh. You got to learn how to make wudu correctly. You have to learn how to pray correctly. You have to know, the halal and the haram, the lawful, the unlawful. Right? Like this is the beginning of being upright. This is the beginning. Okay? And then he said that the next level was iqama. In other words, now you're standing on what you know is the minimum. You know what is right, you know what is wrong, and you're standing on that. Okay? But now you have to rectify the inward. You have to begin to rectify the inward. You don't stop with the outward. Okay? You have to begin to rectify your inward states with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then he said, finally, istiqama is just like being with Allah in all states. Like no matter what you go through, no matter what you experience, you inwardly, even with your outwardly, you're with the people. Outwardly, you're working. But inwardly, you're with Allah. And that's what he said was istiqama. Istiqama. Another one of the scholars explained that like istiqama is a verbal noun. The same way we say istighfar, right? To seek forgiveness, right? Or we say istisqa, right? Or we say istikhara, to seek like guidance in an affair from Allah, right? If that word isti is in the front, it means that you're seeking something. So when we say istiqama, you're seeking to be upright, which means that you have to ask Allah. You have to ask Allah for His help. And the same way, istighfar means to ask Allah for forgiveness. Istiqama means you're asking Allah and you are seeking to be upright. Okay? Meaning you have to do work. You have to do work. All right? Okay. إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Allah doesn't change the condition of a people or a person until they change that which is in their own selves. Okay? Now Abu Talib al-Makki, another one of the spiritual greats, one of the things that he said is that the meaning of this verse is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't change the outward abasement. Right? He doesn't change the humiliation or the abject nature of a person until they change what is in themselves. Meaning, you know, a lot of times as human beings we're deceived. We're deceived. We think because everything is going outwardly, is going good outwardly, that's a sign of a blessing from Allah. And it's not. That is not the sign that you have a blessing from Allah. The sign that you have a blessing from Allah is that you have these inward spiritual states. It has nothing to do with money. Right? If that was the case, then Pharaoh will be closer to Allah. Because he called himself, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. I am your Lord Most High. Why did he say that? Because he had Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt, he had a powerful army, he had gold, he had money, he had sorcerers, he had everything. Right? And that was only a test for him. And we know that he's stamped in history as someone who's going to be punished. We know that. So, the rectification and the islah al-nafs, right? The reforming the self is the first sign that Allah wants good for someone. That Allah wants good, that the person says, I got to get myself together. This is actually a good talk for the New Year's resolution. If you didn't make a New Year's resolution, now you can. I'm going to work on my nafs. I'm going to get myself together. Okay, so if your outward is not correct, right? Like there's things that you need to learn to rectify your salat, to rectify those things, the fara'id, the obligatory actions, that's where you begin. Okay, this is the trunk. This is the trunk of the tree. You have to rectify the outward, right? You have to begin you're praying correctly. You're fulfilling all the conditions of prayer. If you have money, you're paying your zakat every year, right? If Ramadan comes, you should know the rules of fasting. You should know the rules, okay? You should know halal and haram. You should know, okay? You should spend just a little bit of time working on that, okay? You should spend some time working on that. So just make your intention to begin there. You can, just make your intention to work on that, all right? Because you won't make a lot of progress on your spiritual self if you're not holding your limbs to account, you're outwardly, okay? You won't. It's like trying to maintain a fruit that it no longer has the outer peeling. The secret is inside the fruit. You have to unpeel the banana. But if it doesn't have the covering, what's inside is ruined. Okay? We're the same way. If you don't keep these limbs right, the hands, you don't keep them from oppressing people, the tongue from oppressing people, or lies, or the eyes from looking at haram, or the ears from listening to haram, the stomach from consuming haram, the heart from having ill opinions of Allah, the inward will be ruined. The inward will be ruined. Okay? In other words, when I say inward, I'm talking about the heart, which is the center of the soul. So that's why you have to do the outward actions. It's just like an orange, right? The outward is a protection. And it guards what's inside. If everything you see, everything you do outwardly affects you inwardly. And if you're not maintaining that, the inward will be ruined. The same way if you just take the orange peel off, if you take the peel off of an orange and you set it on the counter, right? It's ruined because it has no protection. All right? Now, after that, awamir wa nawahi, right? The obligations, doing what you have been commanded to do, and staying away from what you have been prohibited. People, you should understand, you have to know that whatever Allah has commanded you to do, it's a blessing and a mercy. And whatever He told you to stay away from, is because there's something harmful there for you. Okay, it's something harmful in it. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about alcohol. Allah talks about alcohol in the Quran. And Allah says, and he's talking about alcohol and gambling. Okay? Alcohol and gambling. Today we would call it behavioral, you have a behavioral problem or you have a substance problem. Right? If somebody gambles, they're addicted to gambling, we say, well, this is a behavioral problem. But if he's addicted to substances, we say, oh, he has a substance abuse problem. Okay? So Allah mentions them together, behavioral problems and substance abuse problems in the Quran. And He says that in gambling, maysir wal khamar manafi'u linnas. There's a benefit in it for mankind. This is in the Quran. That in gambling and in alcohol, there is some benefit. But the harm is greater. The harm is greater. So stay away from it. Allah only wants to help you. And so He's not saying that and scientists know, we know now you drink a little bit of alcohol, it helps and all this stuff. But the number one drug problem in America is not cocaine. It's not heroin. It's not methamphetamines. You can combine all of those Schedule II substances and alcohol still comes out on top as the worst substance abuse problem in the country. Divorces, molestation, car crashes, all of this from alcohol. Much less from the other drugs, even though you get penalized more for the other drugs. And Rasulullah said that khamar, it's al-kaba'ith. It is the mother of all foul things. And our society is a testament to that. So when we talk about doing what Allah commanded and staying away from Allah has prohibited, you have to know you're only doing that which He wanted good for you. He wanted good for you. And to stay away from that which is going to harm you. Even though you might not be able to see it. You may not understand it. But you should know that He has your best interest at heart. So, after you learn your fara'id, okay, you have to also look at what Allah has prohibited and try to stay away from it as much as possible. Okay? Try to stay away from it as much as possible. What is the very first thing that Allah asks from us? What's the very first thing that Allah asks from us as human beings? What does He want? What's that?
Seek forgiveness.
Even before seek forgiveness. It's something that you have to do before you seek forgiveness. What's what she said? Gulli?
She got the credit for it.
Yalla kul?
Oh, was it worship?
Yeah, so, right? That you...
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, no. But even before worship. Yes. Right? A'lam annahu la ilaha illahu. You have to know. This is the first commandment. You have to know. You have to be sure. There's only one God. You have to know. You have to be sure about that. There's only one God. Okay? And so then, as the sister said, then you worship. And part of that worship is istighfar. But you have to first know that there's someone that's hearing your prayer. You have to first know that there's someone who is over you. And there's all kinds of proofs. We don't have enough time for that. There's all kinds of proofs for that in the Quran. Right? All kinds of proofs. So that's the first thing. Okay? And then what's after that? What's after belief in Allah? What's after that? Most people get this wrong. Most people get this wrong. No. It's not, it has nothing to do with, well, I'm not going to say nothing to do, but it's not that outward ibadah. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Right? That you have ihsan with your parents. That's the second thing. Okay? The wisdom behind this, some of the scholars say, if you can't have ihsan with your parents, how will you have ihsan with Allah? How? Okay? How? Now, the scholars go deep into this, and that's not what this is about, right? Ihsan to the parents will look different in different places and different times. Okay, it will. There's conditions to all of that. Okay? But I just want to put that on your mind. Okay, so if you have parents, you know, make sure that you help them if they need help, take care of them, right? They need to be taken care of, things like that. Okay? And I'll say something else too. This is a side note, but I will say this. One of my teachers, we were in a class setting, and one of the things that he said was that if you look at Islamic history, that people who made a lot of progress on this path of ihsan was actually the women. And what he explained was that women are, you know, they have more rahmah, right? It comes naturally to them. This is a spiritual virtue, to be merciful, right? Men, we have to learn that, all right? We need our mothers to teach us that. Women do more khidmah, service, because they have children, all right? So after a woman has had children and she's taking care of her family and she's supported her husband and she's helped her husband and she's done all of these things, she already has a lot of the qualities that are necessary on this path. So she very quickly, when she begins to put these things into practice, she very quickly scales the heights of spirituality. Very quickly. We have to work harder. Right? We have to work harder. But we could, you know, we have an advantage a different way. If you're taking care of your family, right? You're making the way for them. Okay? But that was something that he mentioned. And I just wanted to mention that. Okay. Then you have to look at your own particular, right? So, you know, you do the fara'id, right? You look at what did Allah command you to do? This at the basic level. Just what did Allah command me to do? Okay, He told me to pray. Okay, what are the conditions of the prayer? How do I get this right? He told me to fast during Ramadan. How do I get this right? He told me to do this. How do I get this right? Right? And if you just put a little bit of effort into it, Allah will guide you. If your intention is to be guided, inshallah, Allah will guide you. If you, and then after that, everybody will have different circumstances. Some people have businesses. They should know, what does the Sharia say about that business? Buying and selling. Right? There's rules to buying and selling. To make sure that there's no harm. Right? That the buyer is not, that the seller is not harmed and the buyer is not harmed. Okay? What type of contracts are valid? What kind of contracts are invalid? If you have a spouse, right? There's rights and responsibilities. A lot of times we bang our hands about the rights, and we completely forget about the responsibilities. No? Oh. And you know, yeah. And that just made me remember something about inshallah, we'll come back to that. Okay? Oh my goodness. Wow. How much time do I have?
2 or 3 more minutes, inshallah.
2 or 3 more minutes. All right. Okay. All right, let's skip ahead real quick. Taqwa. Okay, taqwa, like I said, the beginning of taqwa, this is had to have awe of God. We talked about istiqama. All right? Like istiqama. But how do you have awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How do you cultivate not offending Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It starts with the limbs. Okay? So I just want to go through this very quickly and just mention some of these things. Okay? Okay, so let's start with the heart. Right? That's the most important limb, the heart. Okay? So, some of the sins of the heart is associating partners with God. Okay? To disbelieve in qadar. That some things have been preordained. Some things have just been preordained. There's nothing you can do about it. You can plan as much as you want. You can have as much money as you want. Is how Allah wants it to happen, that's how it's going to happen. And belief in that, just trust me when I tell you this, if you believe in qadar, it's going to save you so much headache. Because when things don't go your way, you'll be able to say, qadar. Right? Whatever Allah He wants, He fulfills. Okay? Alright, so another thing is riya, right? Riya, doing ibadah for the sake of people. You make salat, but you really don't. You're not making salat to worship Allah. You're making salat so the people get off your back. You know, or to look good in front of people. Right? This is a destroyer of the hearts. After that, the eyes. All right, so we go from the heart. Now we start at the top of the body. The eyes. Some of the sins of the eyes. To look at the opposite sex with lust. Right? To look at the awra, the private area of the opposite sex. To look into houses of others without their permission. Right? These are just some examples. Okay? These are sins. The ears. To listen to backbiting and slander. Okay? Allah forgive us, right? Every time we open up our TikTok or something, right? People talking about this person, talking about this person. You know what I mean? Ask Allah for forgiveness, right? To eavesdrop on a private conversation. Some of the sins of the tongue, lying, backbiting, tale-bearing, right? You're not concerned about whether it's your girl, let me tell you something. I heard this. Right? That's namima. That's namima. Yeah, you know, shh, I'm going to tell you something. That's namima. Just carrying tales. Okay? So that's from the tongue. The stomach includes, you know, alcohol, consuming alcohol, eating food that's bought with unlawful wealth, and on and on. Some of the sins of the private parts. Zina, of course. Sodomy. And I want to say that because like we're living in that time, you know, where people are making this, to display the aura, right? To display the aura, right? To have no concern with showing your private parts, okay? That's some of the sins of the private parts. Some of the sins of the hands, to steal, to kill, to touch someone who is unlawful to touch. All right, some of the sins of the feet, to walk towards committing a sin. Sorry. To walk arrogantly with a strutting gait, you know, I'm the man. Yeah. Right? Allah doesn't like that. And Rasulullah specifically mentioned that. Allah doesn't like that. As for the entire body, and I'm just going through them quickly, I'm not reading all of them, but like to neglect an obligation. Right? To neglect an obligation. That's a sin that the whole body acquires. For men to imitate women or women to imitate men, right? This is, you know, a sin of the whole entire body. So these are all considered, you know, kaba'ir, you know, nawahi, what Allah has forbidden. And you need to be aware of these things if you're going to have taqwa and istiqama. Okay, taqwa and istiqama. If you're going to have awe of Allah, if you're going to be afraid of offending Allah, you have to first know what offends Him. What is offensive to Allah, right? And then you have to be upright on that. You have to stand on that. You have to stand on what you know. That's istiqama. And I'll end with this. You know, in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the awliya, the friends, his close friends, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الْأَوْلِيَاءَ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They have no fear, and they don't grieve. Okay? Because they have these strong spiritual states. But then Allah tells you how they got there. Right? He says that they, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, they believed. وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. And this kanu is what I want to focus on. Kanu in Arabic means something that they did over and over and over again. This was they stayed here. That's another way of saying istiqama. All right? They وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. They had taqwa over and over and over and over again. And that is what helped them to become friends of Allah. What happened? No. Okay. Okay. Any questions? Yes.
What does yaqeen mean?
Yaqeen.
Yeah.
Certainty. Okay. Yaqeen. Certainty. It is right. So iman is belief. But just because you believe does not mean that you are certain. Okay? It does not mean that you are certain. So you want certainty with your iman. That's what you want. Like that is, if you purify your iman and you perfect your iman, that's the spiritual gift that Allah will give you. You will be certain. What will you be certain about? You'll be certain about the rank of Allah. You'll be certain about what He has promised you. You'll be certain about the events of the grave, the events that happen on the Day of Judgment, about Jannah, about Nar, the paradise, the hellfire. You'll be certain about these things because you have removed from your iman all of those things that were detrimental to it. So then Allah will establish you. He will establish you and give you yaqeen. You'll be certain. And Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiallahu anh, that's one of the things that he said. He said, even if the veil was removed for me, right? And he was actually talking about something much more grave, but he said, if it wouldn't increase me in certainty. Why did he say that? Because he had reached the station of certainty already. Okay. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin. الحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى الله على خير الكرك يا أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيبنا وشفيئنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما مباركا كثيرا.
Thank you.